Today is July 10th, 2014, and this is Brent Björkman, Director of the Kentucky Folklife Program. We're working on the Library of Congress Ranger Lore project that we're doing for the American Folklife Center, and it's a real honor to be here today with a very special guest. We're here in Cave City with somebody very special who worked with the Park Service for quite a long time. He has a long family history. He's been at several different parks. He's had a lot of different positions. So we're going to be here today and talk about, what life has been like working as a ranger and all the various types of duties and positions that he's had. Could you state your name and tell me the position that you ended your career with the Park Service in?
Coy Hanson. I was district ranger on National Trace Parkway, the northern section.
Okay. Well, Mr. Hanson, I know that from talking with some of these younger folks at the park, they all really look up to you and the whole Hanson family, and certainly I'm happy to be here and learn more about it. One of the questions I ask people to start out the interview is, how did you become a ranger, or how did you first get involved with thinking this might be something for you? And I think with you, perhaps, was it a family kind of thing, or did you live near a park at the time when you were growing up?
Well, when I was 17 years old, was my first job, a public job, and that was being a night bellhop at the Frozen Tiger Entrance Hotel in Mammoth Cave National Park.
What year would that have been, roughly?
1937. And from there, the following year, in 1938, I was employed as a trailer at Mammoth Cave National Park today. At that time, it was still under private or ownership of the association,
Wow.
National Park Association.
Wow.
I was a trailer and a handyman.
So trailer, that meant that you were along with a lead guy.
I was along with the party. And at that time, you could still get tips. But in 1941, it became a national park, and I got a little raise, but I didn't get any more tips.
That didn't balance itself out then, did it?
I did better with the new position. My first official Park Service thing was a field service one, $100 a month.
Wow.
And I worked at that at 38 until 1941 and became a national park. And I graduated from high school in 40. I got married in 42. And I stayed as a seasonal guide until 1960. I had the war in between there.
You did service?
I went to service in 42, the same year I got married. I got married one day and got my notice to come the next day to be examined. 23 days later, I was sworn into the U.S. Army. And was there until, I guess I got home in 45. My son was born in the meantime. And he was 8 months old when I first saw him. I had 41 missions over Germany in a B-26 bomber.
That's a whole other series of interviews. Have you been interviewed about that yet? Have you been interviewed about your service? Is that something that you've talked about?
No, it's very brief, I guess, according to some, but I went over there in July of 44 and come home in August of 46. I don't know what else I should say about that.
No, that's fine.
One thing that I found was intriguing was the B-26 bomber was, of course, a medium bomber at that time. But that pilot had control of 2 machine guns that shot out through the propeller without ever hitting the propeller.
That was some advanced technology at that time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I thought so.
Yeah.
My first position in that airplane was between the 2 waist windows. I had a 50 caliber out of each window, and we test fire them before getting over enemy territory. And that, after that, I never did get to shoot much except strafing. The enemy fighter planes concentrated on B-17s flying from the 8th Air Force. I was in the 9th Air Force.
So when you came back to service. You were, you had been married right before you went in, and then you came back and you went back to the park. Is that right?
Back to the park, yes.
Uh-huh.
It's seasonally still.
Still as a seasonal still, okay.
And I finally stayed long enough. In 1960, I became a permanent guide. But I had an assistant superintendent to come in, and I had taken the Federal Service Entrance Examination 3 times and had passed. He asked me, said, "Coy, you think you can pass that test again?" I said, "Well, I believe so." He said, "I'll tell you one thing, you pass it, you've got a permanent position." I did pass it. According to the results, it said you passed it well enough to be a GS-9, but I didn't immediately get that. I got GS-7. And from there, I went to Chickamauga, Chattanooga, National Military Park up in North Georgia. There 2 years, and I went to Olympic National Park as a seasonal district ranger again. I stayed there about 16 months and transferred to Great Smoky Mountains National Park with the Job Corps.
Oh, okay, you were connected to with the Job Corps, yeah.
Yeah, the superintendent at the park that time knew me personally, and he come out and stole me from Olympic National Park. I was there at that Job Corps for about 6 months, and am I doing all right?
Yep, great.
And then I went over to O'Connor, that was O'Connor Lefty, and I went over to Tremont Job Corps until I transferred back to the Smokies as district ranger in the Smoky Mountains National Park. The North Carolina side was in my territory, all of it except. And then from there, I transferred to Russell Cave National Monument down in Alabama. That was a Indian type cave that National Geographic had given to the Park Service, and I was there for about a year. And the difference I had at North Carolina was so many people, so much going on. Down there in the meantime, and during the winter you get 2 or 3 cars a day, and that didn't satisfy. So I transferred to Natural Trace Parkway in Tupelo, Mississippi as Assistant Chief Ranger. And then later, getting ready to retire, I asked to be District Ranger on the north part of the Natural Trace. And that's what I retired from in 1982. That pretty well winds up.
So you had 40 years in the Park Service, almost, right?
Well, if you counted over 30 years of actual time, but I mean, some of that seasonal time didn't add up too quick.
That's true, right? That's
I had a very interesting career in the National Park Service.
Tell me about, so when you were 17 and you first started here, did you have other family members that were connected to this? How are you connected to this area? Did you have other people in your family that were?
My brother, Pete Hanson, was very instrumental in discovering the new discovery of 1938. he was later lost his life on Attu Island. And my brother Garner, just younger than I, was director of the National Park Concessions for many years. We were born and raised on a little farm in the park. We all graduated from high school, but I never did get to go to college. My brother H.C. Hanson and Gardner Hanson and my sister Mary Alice all graduated from college. My youngest brother was a Down syndrome victim, and he was the only one that ever did graduate from school.
So tell me about what I've been hearing a little bit about, but you seem connected. You went to the Smokies to be part of that very interesting time when the Job Corps came in. Can you speak about that time, the Job Corps? Can you tell me what it was about and how that worked, the Job Corps?
Job Corps was good for a lot of kids, and good for the community in some places too. It helped different projects come along, training the corpsmen as well as adding to the benefit of the county and cities.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're here, we're talking, I'm very interested in this working life, and you mentioned that you were trailing some tours and things like that. I talked with a lot of cave guides, and they told me some of them had mentors, somebody who brought them along and taught them a lot while they were, how to talk to people, or how they interpreted back then. It sounds like it was a little different way back before as it is today, maybe more informative today, but maybe it was a more joking kind of atmosphere. Or can you tell me some of the names of some of those folks that you worked with when you were first here, and some of those old timers?
Yes, Siebert and Lloyd Wilson were two brothers that were born and raised in Park Service. Lester Carney was very joking with people. Like at one place, there's a little nodule coming out of the ceiling, and it looks like a donut. And the question that people would ask, well, where's the hole? You're in the hole, he said.
So they had their little ways of talking to people.
Yeah.
So you were married. So can you tell me a little bit about? Did you have Did you have children? Did you have children and things? You and your wife have children and.
Just that one son.
Okay.
She went through all that by herself. I was overseas, and it was her choice not to produce any more children.
Okay. So she and your son, they followed you around the park. I mean, you traveled as a family and you stayed in
Right.
quarters.
My son didn't get to travel much. He was getting married about the time we were doing some of our traveling. He got married when I went from Chickamauga, Chattanooga to Olympic. He's 49 years old right now. so he didn't travel much with us after I got into the Park Service.
Okay.
But my wife, as long as I was in the States, I went in. I hope I'm not running this out too bad.
No, it's good. I just need to look at the tape counter.
Anyway, when I first went in the Army, I went up to Indianapolis, and from there I went out near St. Louis, Missouri for a basic training. But when I got there, I went in that night. Overhead, it had a placard that said, "Be a U.S. gunner and earn your sergeant stripes." 2 months later, I was a buck sergeant. And after that, I went to Afraid of Washington to a B-17 thing, and my wife came out there to be with me. For the first time ever being out of Barron and Edmonson County. She came on a night that I had to be out night flying for basic training, and I left a message for her at the local train station what she should do. I had a place for her to go stay. But when she got there, the fellow I left a message with was no longer on duty. She got there after dark. But she saw my handwriting on the wall, on the bulletin board, and got her information from that. And next morning I saw her about 4 o'clock. I was out to join her. I'd been up flying around that one out in Oregon.
Huh.
And she stayed with me there until went to South Dakota to radio gunnery school then. And she was with me until we went back to Ephrata, and there we transferred to Ardmore, Oklahoma. And in 1944, I took her home and went overseas for join the Army Air Corps.
Right.
9th Air Force.
Right.
Yeah.
You worked your way up in the Park Service. You had different jobs, and you progress. How did that training work at the time? Did you have to go to a special training session, or was it on the job training for you?
Just on the job.
Can you tell me how maybe when you first got in that first position? I'm trying to think now. After you were here in your first permanent position that wasn't just trailing, was what position? I can't.
I was a ranger there at Mammoth Cave for 2 years.
That's right.
And my first assignment was to move over to Sand Cave and check on Floyd Collins once a month. He has since been taken out and buried, but his body was there.
Oh, it was on display, or on.
Yeah, had a glass coffin-like thing over his, but he had been patched up because his body was stolen from that cave at one time and thrown over a cliff near the river, and later retrieved and put back in there and patched up.
So that was part of the whole experience of cave touring then, to see this Floyd Collins.
I'd have to go down and check on him once a month. And before, yeah. And from there I went to Chickamauga, Chattanooga, about 2 years after that.
And that position, what was that position?
Well, it was.
What were your duties there?
Patrol some during the park, but then we also had a place up on Lookout Mountain that I had to go relieve a fella 2 days a week that he works up there. I ride that train, it went up the mountain. I guess you've heard of it.
Yeah. And then you would stay up there for the 2 days to give him to spell him?
Yeah, I would go back to my home, but I didn't get much sleep those 2 nights.
Mm-hmm. So it's a variety of duties. You have a lot of different duties when you were in that job.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
They had a little visitor center up there, and this fellow, I would go up and relieve him about 2 days, answer questions, and be there available. Mm-hmm. But down in the park itself, on night patrol a lot.
What does that mean, night patrol? What did you do?
We got out into the park and break up beer and people dating.
Mm-hmm.
Had some strange experiences with that too.
Really?
That I won't go into.
No. Okay. So there was people partying in the parks back then too. People were drinking and having parties back in that day too.
I went up, one fella, and asked him, had he been drinking? No. And the beer cans were laying all around. And other evidence that we won't go into.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so you saw a lot of things. I was wondering, I've been talking to today's law enforcement in the park, and they went through a lot of times where they couldn't carry a gun on their body, or they had to leave the gun in the truck. Did you carry weapons back then?
I never did carry. Well, I'll take that back. When I was in the Smokies, Cherokee Indian Reservation, I wore my gun that night. Well, 2 or 3 different nights. But that's the only time I ever carried a weapon.
Did you have a weapon issued to you?
I had one in the vehicle. I was with the superintendent at Tupelo one time. And I had to stop and get after a boy that was misbehaving. I didn't take my gun, but the superintendent says, "You handle that way."
Yeah.
I don't know about those weapons.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't like to brandish them, I know that.
Yeah.
A lot of guys, the Rangers out there today may not like to hear me say that, but I didn't believe in it.
Yeah, I think they try to use them at a minimum. I think they're pretty thoughtful that way too.
But of course, some Rangers have lost their lives. People like this.
It's not an easy job. I don't think everyone knows that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was talking to Mr. Lee.
Dan Lee?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I was out with him too. You must know him as well.
he's the one who took me to Chickamauga, Chattanooga. He brought I've known that family all my life.
Yeah, they're a very nice family. That's right.
Another experience I might like to tell you about out in the Olympic, we had a river that run into the ocean just below my ranger station, and 3 boys got in the boat and tried to cross it after a rainstorm, and they got swept out to sea. Well, about 6 weeks later, one of the bodies come back on the shore. And it was late in the afternoon when they reported me, so we took the...
Now Mr. Hanson, we were talking about those young boys that got swept out to sea and then came back?
One of them came back. That's all we ever found. But it was late in the afternoon or almost dark, so that body was taken up to my ranger station and stayed all night long.
Wow.
They picked him up the next morning.
Yeah.
But that was kind of a strange experience.
Mm-hmm. Did you have to supervise a lot of people? Supervising different?
Now there, seasonal rangers I would supervise. Fire control aides, they would be out in towers like that. That's the way it was out at Olympic. I was in the Queets River sub-district, and we had a place up on the other side of the Queets River from where we stood. We'd have to go up there and take care of situations.
What kinds of things? What kind of situations up there? What kind of situations did you have to take care of?
Well, people that doing the wrong things. And they had fire control aides up there during the fire season too.
Mm-hmm.
Fire season's not too long out there, but you had a lot to see to. You could go up to that ranch that we had up there and walk along the trail, and you'd have moose, not moose, elk, laying beside the trail. To get over that river, we'd ride a horse and then walk in the rest of the way. It was a great experience.
You were speaking about watching for fires. During your career, were there fires in the parks that you were at? Different fires that happened?
Well, not a big fire, except on the coast. This driftwood would catch a fire, and we'd have to try to put it out. You have plenty of water, but it's hard to get from the ocean. All that salt water, it kind of fouls up the equipment. But I remember one time we did have a fire that went on for 2 or 3 days before we could ever get it controlled. Clam digging was popular out there too. I used to try to dig clams, but you have to be pretty fast to catch.
At low tide, right?
Yeah. You see bubbling where they are. You start digging, before you get there, they're gone most time. What else should I talk about?
Did you have fire crews that came out there? If there was, like today they have fire people that actually are dispatched out to different locations for fire control, or did the local rangers take care of the fires mostly?
Most that we had there. See, you got a lot of rain in that part of the country. Now, south of there into California and Oregon, it's quite different, I guess.
What was your favorite park? What was your favorite park or your favorite duty?
I hate to say, but I think Mammoth Cave was my. I enjoyed Smokies. That was very busy. Kept me out of doldrums.
Now, your duties there with the Job Corps, Mr. Lee brought you there specifically was it to work with the Job Corps, with the young people, or with?
Yeah, you worked with the children and also helped control their activities. They're not all ready to be organized.
So some of it was kind of organized babysitting. I mean, you had to watch them and help them grow up, I suppose.
Yeah. I know one occasion we lost a corpsman. He was on the back of a roller that was pounding trails, you know, and then jiggling, pulling that thing. He lost the thing and he was crushed right in there.
So you had to take care of that, call his family and all that business?
Right.
Yeah. Well, they sure built a lot of great things in our parks, those Job Corps.
They did a lot in a lot of different places. They were at Mammoth Cave very active too.
What did they build at Mammoth Cave? What kinds of things, do you remember?
Well, they went to Brownsville, the county seat, and did some local projects. I didn't work with them there, but I was aware of what was going on. And in fact, they're still active with Job Corps Smokies at Cave, Mammoth Cave. Talking about my brother Garner was general manager of the National Park Concession operation.
At Mammoth Cave, or?
All of the National Park concessions. They had one up in Alaska, Isle Royale, Big Bend, Death Valley at one time, briefly. He had quite a good job, I guess.
Did he make a career out of it too?
He did. He died in 1988, and he was still going pretty active.
Was he older than you?
He was younger than I, just immediately under me. Now that my brother, that was just older than I, lost his life for the National Park concessions. He used to carry mail from the old Mammoth Cave Hotel up to frozen Niagara. One rainy day, he was going towards Mammoth Cave, and if you're familiar where the elevator is, before you get there, it goes around the curve, and he didn't make that curve. Later, my oldest brother, still working for National Park concessions, on my mother's birthday, was going to Glasgow to get her a present. And if you know where that souvenir stand is, Ferguson's just outside the park. The old road went around the other side of it, and he hit a big gas truck. Or a big gas truck hit him, and his death was instant. My brother, that was just older than I, lost his life, like I say, down there. But he lived a couple of days, and he had punctured lungs, which today would not have been too bad, but at that time it was fatal for him.
That's some tragic happenings. Yeah.
The day that he had his accident, I was just coming home from my first year of high school out at Glasgow Junction it was then. When I got home, I got the news that he'd had a wreck. I guess I'm getting too much personal stuff in there.
No, not at all. No, I just needed to look at the timer. Yeah, wow. So what was life like growing up in the park? What was your...
Oh, it was farm life, you might say. My brother Pete that lost his life, and I did a lot of sharecropping because our farm was only about 49 acres. And Dad and Mom raised 10 children.
What'd you grow there? What kind of crops did you grow?
Tobacco and corn, mostly. We'd raise our own bacon and pork. We'd raise our own wheat for flour and our own corn for cornmeal. Me and my brother, just older than I, used to travel from 4 miles to go into Glasgow Junction to get our need like salt and pepper and things like that.
Other than that, you grew it all, or you milled your own flour and you ground your own flour and corn?
Yes.
You had to ground?
And also, we dry sorghum or sugar cane and make molasses. We pick blackberries and different things. My mama had to have at least 100 half-gallons of blackberries canned, besides jams and jellies. Our food we ate well, but we worked for it pretty hard. We raised our wheat, and then a thresher would come around and turn it into from sheaves to loose wheat. And down at Rocky Hill Crossing, you turn left, go out there at the little town where we have left our wheat, and we'd go back whenever we needed it and get more, be on deposit. So most of our food we raised ourselves. We had a sharecropping with Greg Doyle. He owned Doyle Valley. You probably heard of Doyle Valley. Mm-hmm. But anyway, he'd raise turnips down there, and we'd go down and load up a wagon load of turnips. Mama would bury them in the garden, and we'd have turnips all winter long. Wow. She had a way of getting in that it stayed just as dry. Nothing but dirt to showing, and grass or whatever.
Did she know how to did you also dig medicinal plants and stuff? Did you have ginseng and different?
Well, we'd hunt ginseng. It used to be plentiful. And poke salad. Mm-hmm. That was a very
You like the poke salad?
Oh, I do, yeah.
You get it very often anymore? You try it anymore?
Pretty regular. I've got a lot right around here that I can get all I need.
So your mother's people, what family? She was a local girl, your mother?
Yeah, you know what? In all her life, she's within 3 miles of where she was born and raised. Except, now she did travel later after my son was born, they went to Big Bend and Carlsbad and places like that. I got a picture of her standing out in the middle of Rio Grande River with a dress above her knees, going over to Boquillas, that little Mexican village.
So she had a chance to travel because of you, and your movement.
Yeah. I guess that's right. I had a sister working at Big Bend when she went there.
Well, your whole family, many of your brothers and sisters were connected to the park in some way.
Yeah. My two sisters, I had three sisters. Two of them, one worked at Big Bend for a long time, and they both worked in Alaska and Florida. It used to be a national park concessions operation in Florida, the Everglades. I guess between concessions and park service, we did a lot of that.
Hansons everywhere. Hansons all over the United States. Did your brother that was in charge of concessions, did he help them get those jobs, or how did women get jobs back then? Do you remember?
I'd say the one that's in charge of national park concessions, family operated, I reckon. And my brother that got killed in Alaska, on Attu Island, he was instrumental in the discovery in 1938 of the new discovery.
The new discovery cave, or
He was the main one of finding that thing up Roaring River.
Wow. So you have
He and my dad and Leo and Claude Hunt were the four that were in there.
They tell you about that? How did that trip
He never
go?
did say much about it, bless his heart. At that time, it seemed like they tried to keep it kind of quiet for some reason. But I was working there, but he never did tell me anything about it.
So your dad was involved in cave exploring too? Your dad?
Oh, honey. My dad was, the year I was born, 1921, when George Z. Marson opened up new entrance and also froze Niagara. My dad and Uncle Earl was right there with him all through that. I remember they used to have what they called a Delco system that showed the pits and domes going down through the new entrance. And I'd go with Dad down to Bone Green to get distilled water to operate those batteries. I don't know how that did. I've known something about Mammoth Cave all my life, I reckon.
Did your dad first start taking you into was he the one that took you into the cave the first time, or was it your brothers, or was it a family?
And I just don't remember. I was born in 21. I guess I got first acquainted with it going that night bellhop and then working down at the new entrance. I used to carry lanterns from what we call Mountain of Kennedy back to Valley City entrance. We had lanterns, what they call a dyke, kerosene lantern. You put one out here and then you take the hooks off the others. You have about 10 there and 10 here. Then you tie them together with what we call grass sacks. Sling them over your shoulder and carry them back to the cave entrance. Up 183 steps, I believe it was.
Wow. Times have changed.
Yeah.
You were around when they used to throw flares too, when they used to throw
Oh, yeah.
torches.
My dad, left-handed, he was real good at that. I never did get that knowledge or experience. I remember one of my first experiences, there's a place called Purgatory Slough. There's a little hole above there called a Nat's Eye. I remember the first time I tried that, I threw, hit the wall and bounced down. Lit another one, didn't learn anything from the first one. Somebody says, "Rookie guide." But my dad, there's a place called Mammoth Dome out what used to be the Echo River Trip, and you walk out on a bridge and you look up, it's a big tall dome above you. But anyway, there's a place up there they call the Liberty Bell. It's shaped just like a bell. And my dad could hit that about every time. He's left-handed and it worked out just right. I'd try it. I wouldn't hit the bell, but there's waterfall right under it. I'd get it on that ledge, and that waterfall would show up so beautiful. And I didn't explain anything about the Liberty Bell. But anyway, I hit a few things with the torch.
That would be something to see. I would love to see somebody throwing a torch again. That's interesting.
Fred Furlong was another left-handed, and both of them they could hit that about every time. That's way up there too. But that went through that hole, and that is narrow at the top, and just kind of looked exactly like the Liberty Bell.
How did they do those torches? Is it creosote, or how did you produce? How did you make a torch? Do you remember that?
Just cotton cloth, twist it pretty tight, wrap it up pretty heavy at the bottom, soak it in kerosene, and it smoked up the cave pretty good.
And the handle was just a chunk of wood, or
what now?
the handle, the torch itself, was it a piece of wood, or was it
Yeah, it's a torch stick. I guess I don't have one right here now. I let Rondell Doyle have one of mine for display out at his place in Cave City. I've still got some over at my home place.
Where's your home place? Oh, you mean the place where you grew up? Or...
Yeah, where my mother grew up. Oh, are you familiar with what's called Chaumont?
Mm-mm.
Diamond Cavern?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you get to the top of the hill?
Mm-hmm.
That's Chaumont. Anyway, just across the road is where my mother was born and raised. The little clump of trees there. And now there's a house that sits just beyond it. That's where my brother Garner built them a home. And that down into the park about a mile and a half is where I was born and raised in the log cabin. You heard the dog trot cabins?
Sure have.
I was born and raised in there with a big chimney at each end with sandstone chimney. But the dog trot was closed in, so that was a bedroom for my dad. And he had built a little room on the back of it for all of us boys.
So you all lived together in that one room, the boys did?
Be about 4 or 5 of us at times. You had two beds. You ever hear of a straw tick?
The straw tick mattress?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we have to sleep on. We had plenty of straw. How my mother kept us going, I don't know, but she did.
Your dad was a guide then, right? Your father was a guide?
Yeah, until he had to retire.
When do you reckon he started guiding?
21.
He started guiding in 21.
Well, it wasn't guiding to start with, but George D. Morrison he and Uncle Earl and 2 or 3 other fellows helped develop those 2 entrances.
And he guided for how long? Until
he was 70, they made him quit. About 44 years, I believe it would be. And that new entrance, there used to be a man by the name of Mr. Braden and Mr. Yarrow. There's a building down right up from the entrance, built around trees. And that Mr. Braden had made me a little thing shaped like an acorn. and it tipped out like top to a point, and it screws on. I still got that, but I think it's over at the home place. He made me when I was just 3 or 4 years old. Oh, I have a lot of memories if I could bring them all up.
Well, you're bringing some up. You're doing good. Yeah. Yeah, it was quite a time here. You made your own food and you got along, but you worked hard, didn't you?
Yeah, I felt like I've had plenty of good food all my life. Of course, I thought my mother's cooking was the best it ever was.
I'm sure it was wonderful. What was your favorite food? What did you like the best? What did you look forward to?
I guess ham for meat and corn's awfully good just on the cob. Right now, I eat in the morning at Fruit Loops one day and bacon and where was it? Running out of words.
Whatever tastes right to you at the time. You enjoy whatever you want to eat.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what I have for breakfast. It's not pitiful. Bacon and biscuit and honey and egg. That's it. Egg and bacon, biscuit and honey.
Sounds great. You been back to the park at all? Have you been back to the park lately?
Not since last 4th of July. Oh, yeah, I went back Sunday after 4th. There on 4th of July, my son and I went and had a good day. My brother didn't get to go, but he wanted to go the next, he wanted to go Sunday. We had the same waitress as I had back in Easter, and she come in to wait on us, and after she served us, I said, "You're Debbie, aren't you?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "You remembered me?" About 3 months earlier, she had served us. And you know what? We got ready to get the bill. My brother was paying that day. He said, "Hon, you haven't added that ice cream on there." She says, "It's on me today."
She appreciated that, didn't she?
Yeah, recognizing her, I guess.
Yeah. So you've been going to the reunions? Do you go to the guide reunions they have every few years?
But every 5 years we have one. I believe one's due this year. And usually have one right after Christmas. The first Saturday after Christmas, usually. Joe Duval used to head that up, but last year he went off to Florida to be with his daughter. But we have a good time.
That's great. What do you have any hopes for the future for the park? What would you tell some young people that really wanted to start working at the park? What do you hope for them about the national park here?
I hope that they'll be successful. I have a friend that goes to church. She's 16. She's working at Diamond Caverns, and she wants to apply for, when she gets 18, she wants to apply at Mammoth Cave. She's trying to get a little experience.
So you're encouraging to her?
Yeah,
what do you tell her? What advice do you give her?
I tell her, keep plugging. I plugged for, 38 to 60 before I got a permanent job. Speaking of Diamond Cavern, though, my granddad, on my mother's dad, he was a guide for Diamond Cavern for years.
What was his name?
M. Doyle. It was Mr. Dr. Rousey that owned it at that time. I guess his descendants still do. I'm not sure.
So you've got cave guides on both your sides of your family.
Oh, yeah. And my grandfather, Peter Hanson, was a carpenter for the old Mammoth Cave operation. He died in 1912, I believe. But he did a lot of work for the old hotel. You know, one burned about 16, but he was already gone. He wasn't there to help rebuild that one.
How long have the Hansons been around here? How far back do the Hansons go, do you know?
Well, my granddad goes back I can't pinpoint it exactly.
At least middle of the 1800s. At least the middle of the 1800s somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. He died in 1912, so yeah, he was. You got it right there, somewhere in that vicinity. I had Uncle Oscar born in '89. Uncle Oscar, by the way, was town marshal of Cave City when Floyd Collins was trapped.
When Floyd Collins was trapped.
That was 1925.
Yeah, you were just a little tyke when that happened, weren't you?
Yeah, but I was there.
Were you?
My dad went over and went down and he talked to Floyd Collins. There's a lot of Model Ts around there, about the best thing I can remember about it. But yeah, he took me with him. That is right.
Big audience, a lot of people around there waiting.
Oh, and just a lot of moonshine being sold. Oh my!
Yeah.
I guess I would either.
I think you're right.
I can remember all those cars and people being around.
Lots on the radio too, I think, right?
Do what on?
There was lots of talk on the radio as well.
Oh yeah, that's the only communication they had like that those days, and newspapers. Mm-hmm. I've been a fan of Courier Journal for all. You probably noticed a big puzzle in yonder. Mm-hmm. My daughter-in-law enlarges that for me. I've been working crossword puzzles since way back.
Yeah, I like them too.
In fact, my son helps me now with the computers. Some of those questions that I wouldn't have any idea about, he'll find on the computer for me. That's and between us since 2008, we haven't missed one.
That's great. Keeps your mind sharp.
Yeah, I hope so. Hope it helped me keep my memory.
Yeah. Well, you've done a lot. You've done real well today. I appreciate you sharing with us today. Do you have any other thoughts you'd like to give me? You sure have shared a lot.
I don't know. I'm not much on giving advice. But I think you're doing a wonderful thing.
Thank you.
Kind of getting some histories.